Starting off this countdown, we have Hotel Room 333. The Langham Hotel is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in London, and Room 333 is why it has this reputation. So the hotel was first built in 1865. There are over 500 rooms and suites, and also a number of ghosts as well. There are at least 5 ghosts that make their presence known on the regular, but several other ghosts haunt the hotel as well. The most active ghost is said to be that of a German prince. It's believed that he threw himself out of a window on the upper story room and he passed away. Well, guests have seen this ghost on a number of occasions. He is known to move through walls and close doors. If you feel a sudden drop in temperature, it's said that that's a sign he is near. Then you also have the ghost of a man with a gaping wound on his face. They don't know what happened to him, but they know that he's terrifying looking. And you have the ghost of a butler that has been seen wandering the corridors in ripped socks. And a ghost of a man in a pale blue suit with a powdered wig on. But let's get to the most haunted room, Room 333. People who have stayed in this room have encountered a number of terrifying ghosts. The first sighting was made by a BBC newscaster. He was staying in the room when he woke up to see a fluorescent ball of light floating above him. This ball slowly transformed into a human apparition. The apparition then hovered in his room. He was dressed in Victorian evening wear, but one of his legs was missing. He came towards the newscaster with his arms open and eyes wide before disappearing into thin air. Maybe the poor dude just wanted a hug, you know? He's coming out like, I don't know. Another ghost that haunts this room is the ghost of a doctor who took the life of his wife on their honeymoon. This guy often appears wearing a cloak and often has blank staring eyes. And lastly, we have Emperor Napoleon III. Apparently he lived at the Langham Hotel during his last days in exile and has also made an appearance in Room 333. In our 4th spot today we have Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden is a well-known individual in American criminal history. If you don't know who she is, well hey, here's a quick little nursery rhyme that'll teach you all about her. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That's a sick nursery rhyme based on the real murder Lizzie Borden committed. But it turns out she only struck her mom 19 times and her dad 10 times. I mean, it's still bad, but anyways, back in 1892, her parents were found dead. After investigating the scene, Lizzie was the only person who seemed guilty, although her case is pretty controversial. Some say she did it, others say she didn't. Anyways, the Borden murder house is now a bed and breakfast museum, in case you want to stay in a real place where gruesome murders happened. And turns out that Lizzie, as well as others, haunt the grounds. Late at night, apparently she could be heard laughing at the top of the stairs. Others have seen doors open and close on their own. Or they'll just be chilling out, minding their own business, when all of a sudden they get a whiff of Lizzie's perfume. On top of that, others have heard the traumatized maid screaming for help. And others have seen her parents walking the grounds. In our 3rd spot, we have the Banff Springs Hotel. There's one room in this hotel that was so scary and plagued with paranormal activity that they no longer let anyone in that room, and it has since been boarded up. So Banff Springs Hotel is considered a luxury mountain resort located in Canada. Seems kind of odd that it's terribly haunted, but it is. So according to a number of legends, the hotel is haunted by its tragic past. Decades ago, a family was killed in room 873. In 1928, a married couple and their daughter checked into the hotel, but they never checked out. During one night, the father ended up taking the lives of his wife and daughter before taking his own life. No one knows why he did such a horrific deed. Soon after, the room was refurbished and booked out to visitors. But weird things started happening in that room. Guests would wake up in the middle of the night to sounds of screaming. When they would flip on the lights, they would see bloody handprints on the mirror inside their room. Obviously, they would freak the hell out and then run to the front desk. But when the staff went to the room to investigate, the prints would be gone. It was happening so frequently that they decided to board up the room. In fact, if you go to the hotel today, there are rooms ending in 73 on each floor except the 8th floor. In the spot that the room should be, you can tell that a room was once there but has since been boarded up. There are lights placed above each doorway, and there is one above where this missing door would have been. Not only that, but the baseboard is cut where the door would have been. And if you knock along the walls, it sounds like it's made of thick plaster. But if you knock on the spot where room 873 should be, it sounds hollow. So it's believed that there is definitely a room 873 at the Banff Springs Hotel, and they boarded it up because it's literally haunted by the family that died in there. It's really freaky. I'm good with keeping that room sealed up forever, okay? In our second spot, we have the Axe Murder House, aka another place that you'll never catch me at, and another place plagued with paranormal activity and dark history. So on June 10th, 1912, husband and wife Josiah and Sarah Moore and their 3 sons and daughter were found bludgeoned to death inside of their home. The killer was never caught. After investigating the bodies and crime scene, it was concluded that the dark deed was done at around 12:45 midnight. They found 2 cigarettes in the attic, suggesting that the killer or killers were waiting in the attic until the family went to bed. They started in the master bedroom with the parents, struck them with an axe, and then moved on. Then they returned back to the master bedroom at the end to hit the 2 with more blows. And now it's said that this house and the rooms in it are extremely haunted. People that have gone on tours of the house have claimed to hear children's voices and screams. Others have seen objects move and fly on their own. But in 2014, something very scary and unexplainable happened. It happened to paranormal investigator Robert Stephen Larson Jr. He was touring the house. While staying at the house, he stabbed himself in the chest. The freakiest part? He got stabbed at 12:45 a.m. the same time the murders of the Moore family occurred. So yeah, maybe don't go exploring the rooms there unless you want something like that to happen to you. And in our number 1 spot today, we have room B340. Room B340 is a part of the Queen Mary, which is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in America. There are a number of ghosts that haunt this hotel, from Jackie, the little girl who haunts the first-class pool, to a man named John Petter who was crushed by a watertight door, to Second Senior Officer William Eric Stark who accidentally drank cleaning fluid instead of gin, and one of the cooks who was baked alive by his own staff during World War II. So yeah, a lot of dark things have happened on this ship turned hotel. Now there is one room on this ship that you never, and I mean never, want to go to, and that is room B340. It's the site of a huge tragedy. So back in the 60s, the ship was used for transatlantic cruises. Well, while on this cruise, a man went crazy and took the lives of 2 women in this room. When his crimes were discovered, he was locked in the room until they could dock the ship and deal with him. The door was locked from the outside and a guard was positioned outside the room so the killer couldn't escape. At one point, the guard heard the man pounding on the door, saying that someone was in the room with him and was trying to kill him. Obviously the guard was like, I ain't no idiot, and never opened the door. He thought that this was the guy trying to get the guard to open the door so that he could escape. Here's where it gets weird, okay? Shortly after, the guard heard nothing coming from the room, so he thought, okay, the man finally settled down and went to bed. The next day, the ship arrived in New York and the NYPD boarded the ship to arrest the man. But when he opened the door, they found the man's body parts scattered across the room. His limbs had been ripped off and they were all over the place. There was no way he could have done this to himself. So what happened to him in there? Was there actually someone in that room with him? If so, how did they get in? And who is this person? It's just all so eerie, and that's why you should never board the ship, let alone go to this room. But if you want to, its ship welcomes paranormal investigators or anyone brave enough to spend the night there. A number of guests have reported eerie things happening to them in the middle of the night. In 1966, a woman was staying in the room and woke up to the covers on the bed being pulled off of her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a man standing at the end of her bed. She screamed and ran out of her room, but when she did, the man vanished into thin air. Other guests have complained about the lights in the room flickering on and off, or have heard sounds of someone knocking on the door in the middle of the night. Even the hotel maids have complained about the room, saying sometimes they have entered the room to find the water in the bathroom running, when no one was in the room for days. So with all that being said, would you dare to spend the night?
Coming in at number 5, we have Castle Stuart. Magnificently situated on the Moray Firth near Inverness, the 5-star Castle Stuart is a site sight to behold. A mere 7 miles from the heart of Inverness, Castle Stewart is an ideally located base from which to explore the scenic and historic Highlands of Scotland. Walk the battlements with the ghost of Charles I before he lost his kingdom and his head, or with Bonnie Prince Charlie the night before his tragic defeat at nearby Culloden Moor. The property was held by the Macintoshes but was given by Mary, Queen of Scots, to James Stewart, Earl of Moray. Moray was made regent for James VI but was later assassinated. During the time that Stewart lived in the castle for an unknown reason, local residents began to spread the rumour that the castle was haunted. To disprove the theory, James Stewart offered a reward to anyone willing to spend a night in the castle. A local minister accepted the challenge and stayed in a room at the top of the East Tower. Stewart was hopeful that once the minister told the people that the tower was not haunted, the word of the castle being haunted would not spread. The next morning, however, he was found dead in the courtyard with a look of terror on his face. It was never explained what had happened to him and no killer was ever found. At some point in the night, he had either jumped from the window of the tower or he had been pushed. This only cemented the fear that the castle was in fact cursed. From that day, the locals refused to enter the castle grounds. It lay dormant for around 300 years until it was refurbished and turned into the hotel that we know today. Guests who have stayed there since it reopened have experienced a number of hauntings. Staff have heard disembodied footsteps on the stairs at midnight, horrible screams, and the ghost of a headless man was seen prowling the corridors. Some people have seen a figure pass their window too fast for them to make sense of it, but caught a glimpse in their eye as if someone had fallen from the tower above. The reviews of the hotel prove that guests are convinced the hauntings are real, but they also claim to have enjoyed the stay. If you like being terrified by ancient spirits or tormented by lost souls, this might be the place for you. In at number 4, we have Chillingham Castle in Chillingham. Chillingham Castle is a 13th century stronghold famed for action and battles. With its fine rooms, gardens, lakes, fountains, and tea rooms, the castle has an extraordinary ownership bloodline which runs back to the 1200s. Chillingham occupied a strategic position during Northumberland's bloody border feuds. Chillingham Castle was often under attack and often basked in the patronage of royal visitors, a tradition that remains to this day. Edward VIII came to hunt there, and members of today's royal family continue the tradition with private visits to the castle this century. The medieval castle remains as it was, just with galleries that you can see today added in Tudor days. For the visit of King James VI of Scotland, the castle is a dark past at the hands of the once owner John Sage. Once injured, he could no longer fight for the king. He begged to be kept on in some capacity. He was given the job of torture and stepped into his new role with relish. It was said that he had a deep hatred for the Scots and little mercy, with over 7,500 men, women and children suffering an agonizing end at his hands. Often legs and arms were broken before they were thrown 20 feet down into the oubliette. With no way to escape, they were to eventually starve and pass away in pain and in fear. It was also said that John Sage met with an equally gruesome death after he accidentally killed a tribesman's daughter that he had been in love with. The father exacted his revenge and John was executed at Chillingham, with parts of his body being taken as souvenirs, a fitting end to a life dedicated to such cruelty. One of the most famous ghosts is the ghost of the Blue Boy, often witnessed by flashes of blue light or halo. These sightings settled down when 2 skeletons, one of a man and the other a young boy, were uncovered during renovation work. They even found documents with the remains dating back to the Armada. Who they were and why they were hidden remains a mystery. Some of the smaller hauntings guests reported including footsteps being heard walking around the rooms and the taps turning on by themselves. Another common sighting includes those of the Lady in White, who, after suffering from being poisoned, begged guests for water in the pantry. These are just a couple of the ghosts and hauntings around the castle. If you're brave enough to investigate, you might find a few more. In at number 3, the Swan Hotel in Suffolk. This luxury 4-star hotel is set in the middle of the historic Tudor town of Lavenham. In the heart of Suffolk, its oak-beamed interior makes for a cozy feel, giving guests a sense of stepping back in time. It's said that a housekeeper who once lived there back when the hotel was a thriving coaching inn back in the 19th century fell pregnant out of wedlock. The baby's father was happy to marry the lady under the circumstances and promised to look after them both. However, on the wedding day, the gentleman had second thoughts and left the pregnant lady standing at the altar. Savage. It is said that after that she became inconsolable and very depressed. What is now room 15 in the Swan Hotel was once the housekeeping quarters, and it is said that the poor woman was found hanging in this room by one of the inn's workers. Her ghost remains behind to chill the spines of those that dared to cross her path. A security guard was working alone late one night at the Swan Hotel, and as he was doing his final checks around the hotel, he came into contact with her, which scared him out of his wits and sent him running in the other direction. Several guests have reported having seen her standing in room 15 in the middle of the night. Once a nun was staying in that very room when she awoke, startled to feel the ghost tickling her feet. I guess you either get lucky and she likes you, or she chooses to scare you half to death. In at number 2 we have the Langham in London. One of the more upmarket entries on this list is the Langham in London. I know it's upmarket because Cher stayed there. How do I know? Because I stalk her life. Since opening in 1865, this 5-star hotel has played host to a number of infamous historical figures, both living and dead. With nearly 500 rooms and suites, it's really not surprising that a number of ghosts have been seen regularly at the hotel. The paranormal activity at the hotel became apparent when it was owned by the BBC, when it was discovered that there were at least 5 ghosts that make regular appearances at the hotel. The most active of the ghosts at the hotel is said to be that of a German prince or nobleman who was thought to have met his death when he threw himself out of the window of an upper story room. Ghosts have seen his ghostly form moving through walls and closed doors, and he is often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature. Room 333 is supposed to be the most haunted. In this room, a BBC newscaster woke up to see a fluorescent ball of light which slowly took a human shape. The apparition hovered 2 feet above the floor, the lower portion of its legs missing. It was dressed in extravagant Victorian evening wear. The announcer tried to communicate with the ghost, asking what it wanted. The spirit slowly started to move towards the newscaster, arms outstretched, eyes empty. The announcer fled in distress to the safety of his co-workers and told them of this encounter. A colleague accompanied him back to his room. The ghost was still there when they entered, but appeared less visible and less threatening before slowly fading away. Other BBC staff reported seeing the apparition in the same room, though only in October. There have been reports from other famous guests that taps will turn on in the night and turn off when investigated. Many people often struggle to sleep here and have to move rooms or even hotels. And finally, in at number 1 we have Malmaison in Oxford. This hotel is the most unique on this list. It was once a large prison located in Oxford. They have converted each cell into a hotel room. They have 95 rooms from you to choose from, starting with standard double house of correction to signature suite that is a 2-story of cells converted to a loft-style room. Oxford Castle functioned as Her Majesty's Prison Oxford from 1888 to 1996. One of the more notable prisoners to be held in Oxford Castle was Mary Blandy, an 18th century murderer who poisoned her father with arsenic. She believed the arsenic was a love potion that would force him to approve of her fiancé, a Scottish nobleman who was already married. She was hanged on April 6, 1752. It's said that her spirit still roams the castle to this day. During the Victorian era, it wasn't uncommon for children to be imprisoned inside. The youngest inmate to be held inside Oxford Prison was Julie Ann Crumpling. She was just 7 years old when she was sentenced to 7 days of hard labour for allegedly stealing a pram. Perhaps the most terrifying report comes from one of the security guards who was on his nightly patrol. The security has long been very wary of the location and had experienced several things before such an unexplained sounds, bangs, and the usual phenomena. However, on one dark night when the guards was coming to an end of his patrol, when his dog stopped and shuffled quickly backwards, growling at something in front of him. It was then 2 large shadow figures appeared before him. As anyone would do, he ran as fast as he could. A few days later, his dog died suddenly. He believed he had been frightened to death. You can stay in rooms when prisoners were once tortured and even killed. Although the hotel has been fitted to be a rather comfortable boutique hotel, it does not erase the horrors that have occurred. Sometime in the 1970s, a group were carrying out a sentence in one of the cells when poltergeist activity suddenly erupted. Things got so bad that a priest had to be called to exorcise whatever they had awoken. Would you dare stay here? I wouldn't, although maybe, we'll see.
In 5th place, we have Mount Athos in Greece. Mount Athos is a mountain and peninsula in the northeastern Greece and is an important center of Eastern Orthodox monasticism, which has been occupied for more than a millennium by Russian Orthodox monks. I promise I try with pronunciation. The long-standing gender ban on this ancient mountain doesn't apply to just women, but also includes many female domestic animals. So, how the heck has the animal population not died out yet? Also, more importantly, who the heck has the job of wandering around and policing animal genitalia? I genuinely want to know how that's policed, because in my brain it's currently playing a very Looney Tunes skit and I'm cackling, as you can see. Does someone bring in fresh creatures from the mainland to help with the population? Sure, in the Jurassic Park universe, all the dinosaurs are female, but that's entirely different because they're still able to procreate under monitoring and careful breeding, but males don't have the same nesting organs to make this a reality. Okay, fine, I'll get back on topic, but if anyone knows anything about how the heck this could be achieved, please let me know in the comments. Commonly known amongst Greeks as the Holy Mountain, the self-governed Mount Athos, which encompasses both the mountain and a peninsula in Macedonia, is accessible only via ferry and only to men with a special permit. If you want to visit the mount, the first step is to submit a copy of your passport to the Mount Athos Pilgrims Bureau. Each day, 100 Orthodox and 10 non-Orthodox male pilgrims are admitted for a 3-night stay in one of the peninsula's 20 monasteries. A centuries-old belief maintains that the presence of females inhibits their path to the spiritual enlightenment of the monks living there, amongst its, once again, 20 monasteries, and also to ensure celibacy, which I would understand if it weren't also for the ban on female animals. For crying out loud, folks, if you take a vow of celibacy, your willpower should be enough, or maybe it ain't for you if you can't control yourself around a woman. I'm gonna start screeching about sexist dress codes for the same reasons if I don't watch myself. Fun fact, over the years, a handful of women have been successful in sneaking onto Mount Athos's forbidden to female shores, including a French writer who reportedly underwent a double mastectomy in order to disguise herself as a monk in the 1920s, and more recently, 4 Moldovan women who illegally entered Greece and accidentally ended up there. Backtracking really quickly, it was first invaded in 382 by the Placentia, the daughter of the Emperor Theodosius. Greek journalist Malvina Karali was the latest woman to break the ban and enter onto the territory of Mount Athos, when, as she claims, she entered the sanctuary dressed as a man in the 1990s. Atta girls. In 4th place, we have the Galaxy Water Park in Bavaria. Alrighty, so this might not be as terrifying as some of the other places on this list in the, I fear for my life or men are doing scary things type of way, but just stay with me here. One of Europe's largest and most popular water parks, which is part of the sprawling Therme Erding sauna complex near Munich, banned women from one of its high-speed slides because owners determined it to be causing, intimate injuries. According to a park official, at least 6 women suffered injury to their genital area on the extreme phaser slide, in which participants can reportedly hit speeds up to 45 miles per hour. Pardon me while I pick my jaw up off the floor. For starters, as someone with the genitalia referred to, I'm wondering how the heck the other genitalia, which to my knowledge is more sensitive upon impact, surviving, without being in the same amount of pain or worse. Come on, one bad soccer ball to the collapsible schlong and nuts, and down goes the human. Whereas for those who possess the genitalia that isn't that, I can speak for experience that I can withstand that and not fall to my knees. So what kind of targeted water pressure hell does this slide have that people are getting injured from? Now, a park spokesman told an English language newspaper that it was working on developing a special bodysuit for women to prevent such mishaps in the future. According to a gynecological association that was referenced in the newspaper, however, there was no medical condition other than pregnancy that should prevent women from using such a slide. Yeah, I'm giving this water park some serious side-eye. Honestly, is there not some kind of overall health and safety thing that can come into play to fix this nonsense? In 3rd place, we have Saudi Arabia. If you're a solo female traveler looking to visit Saudi Arabia as a tourist, you'll have an easier time booking a trip to Mars. As of 2010, tourist visas to Saudi Arabia don't exist, and visas for business and to visit family are notoriously difficult for women to obtain. On top of that, women who travel to the country normally must be accompanied by a male relative in order to be granted entry. And even though some things have lightened over the years, Saudi Arabia isn't exactly a welcoming destination for women. Women just needing a man or government permission to do just about anything. Saudi Arabian women aren't even allowed to drive. Now, as a gal who watches WWE, this is something I've noticed before. When they started hosting events in Saudi Arabia back in 2014, women were not allowed to wrestle on those shows, not until 2019. At that first event in 2019, Lacey Evans, a wrestler who usually competes in a two-piece, very revealing outfit, wore a full black bodysuit instead of her normal ring attire, with a very large baggy shirt over top due to the country's conservative dress policy. This became the norm for women's matches until 2021, when women were allowed to customize their bodysuits but still had to wear the baggy shirts. Crown Jewel of 2021 was also the first show to feature more than one women's match. It was only in 2022 when women were able to ditch the baggy shirts, but to this day still have to wear the one-piece outfits. Was this a long way to compare the portrayal of women and their rights in North America versus Saudi Arabia? Yes. But was it also the easiest and most factual way I knew how? Also yes. In 2nd place, we have the sacred Japanese island Okinoshima. Okinoshima is an island 60 kilometers off of the coast of Kyushu in the Genkai Sea. I swear I looked up how to pronounce these things, so if I get it wrong, blame the interwebs. With its remote location, steep cliffs, primeval forests, and almost no infrastructure other than a simple port, it doesn't exactly look like the most welcoming place at first glance. But the island apparently has a lot going for it, even though the only official inhabitant of Okinoshima is a single Shinto priest tending to the island's shrine, which is alternatively known as Okitsugu, part of the Munakata Taisha Grand Shrine complex spread across a total of 2 islands and the Kyushu mainland. Pardon me, it's a series of priests who spend 10-day intervals on the almost deserted island, but always one at a time. They have 2 jobs, hey, just like most of us in this economy. One is to chant prayers to Tagorohime, daughter of the sun goddess Amaterasu, one of the most important deities in the entire Shinto pantheon. The second is to make sure that no woman ever steps foot on the island. Not to sound like a broken record, but I've worked less stupid jobs, and that's saying something. I'm a workaholic performer, so when I say my resume is as long as my arm, me calling a job stupid means something. Women are strictly prohibited from landing on Okinoshima, and the actual cause of which isn't fully understood. Some say it's because of women's links to menstrual fluid, which is considered impure by some Shinto schools of thought. Other theories say that women aren't allowed on Okinoshima to protect them, as some Japanese goddesses have been known to be distrustful of potential rivals. In the past, artists specializing in image of Benzaiten, the syncretic Japanese goddess of beauty, music, and love, were actually advised not to marry so as to not make the deity jealous about them having another woman in their lives. But there are no such stories about Tagorohime, and allegedly she isn't even the most important deity in the neighborhood. The whole of Okinoshima is. So all you've got is the impurity of a natural function and maybe offending a goddess? And by my research, no one is 100% sure that's accurate? Alrighty, moving on before I start saying words in French that will for sure anger the interweb gods. Apparently in the Shinto religion, it's not uncommon for land masses to be worshipped as gods, which is actually the case with the island of Mayahima, home to the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Itsukushima Shrine, which is why the complex's main shrine and torii gate were constructed on the shore and on the water instead of deeper on the island. When it comes to women, however, they are absolutely allowed on that one. Some Shinto sites, yes, do exclude female visitors, such as Mount Omin or Mount Sanjo in the Narita Prefecture. But here's the kicker. They at least have historic records proving that the practice goes back centuries. With Okinoshima, no one really knows how the no women allowed rule started. The Okitsumiya shrine dates back to around the 17th century, but religious rites were performed on Okinoshima as far back as the 4th century. In all that time, no written account about women being banned from the island has surfaced. In fact, the whole idea sounds contrary to the origins of Okinoshima as a deity. The best available evidence says that the island was a seafaring guidepost on a trading route to Korea, as well as a harbor for fisherfolk venturing far out into the sea. To ensure safe sea passages through dangerous waters, these mariners would stop at Okinoshima and make offerings of mirrors, bronze dragon ornaments, food, and much more. Oh, I'm not done yet. According to interviews conducted by Dr. Lindsay E. DeWitt from the University of California, it was common for centuries for male-female fishing couples to travel to the island together to make offerings. It's not clear when that changed, but it did. Starting around the Edo period, so between 1603 to 1868, Okinoshima became off-limits to women. That's a smidge too recent in history, ergo me making a face right now. A little bit suspicious. Fun fact, there used to be a tradition of allowing 200 men onto the island on May 27th every year, but only after they stripped naked and underwent a sacred rite of ablution that they could never ever talk about in detail whatever they saw on that day. But after Okinoshima became Japan's 21st UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2017, the ceremony was cancelled indefinitely. Fascinating sidebar. During that annual event, every man admitted to Okinoshima was forbidden from removing anything from the island. I'm talking no pebbles, or talking about what they saw or experienced there. Here's the fun historical thing though. Huge archaeological expeditions in the past have removed much more than pebbles from the island. Currently, the Munakata Taisha Shrine Museum in Kyushu houses 80,000 precious artifacts, including bronze mirrors, beads, and shards of glass, presumably brought to Japan by way of the distant Silk Road, which were all taken from Okinoshima. And yet the island is still standing, so maybe the gods would also be fine with female visitors? Just saying. In first place, we have the La Rinconda gold mine. Ah, gold mines. Reminds me of home. I grew up in a gold mining town, so it's part of my history. Heck, my preference for silver jewelry over gold quite often vexes my dad. So sadly, while women in my town were, on equal footing with the men, this isn't going to be as lovely of a tale. The La Rinconada gold mine in Peru is both the highest elevated settlement on the planet at 16,732 feet and perhaps the most exploitative place in the world. People come to this remote hellhole to work for the corporation that owns the mine for zero pay. At the end of their 30-day shift, they can take home as much raw ore as they can carry, but here's the catch. They don't know if there's actually any gold in the ore. Not gonna lie, I doubted that statement at first, so I actually called up my dad, and he confirmed it for me. It's all certainly illegal, but no one's doing anything about it. The town the mine is a part of has zero sanitation, no plumbing, most of the trash is burned in the streets, and city services simply don't exist. But the most bizarre aspect of this brutal, unforgiving town is the fact that women aren't allowed to enter the mines, all because of superstitions. All they're allowed to do is pan for gold in the wastewaters coming off the mountain. And hey, knowing what we know now, how about spotted golden ore, they might be getting the better part of this deal. Worse than being barred from the only source of potential income in the area is the fact that many women are exploited at the mine. If panning for gold fails them, many women are forced into schmex work, including underage folks. Okay, no trips to Peru anytime soon. Noted. Number 5, Otero County Courthouse, New Mexico. In the quiet corners of Alamogordo, New Mexico, I swear I looked that up, lies the Otero County Courthouse, a place where the line between the living and the spectral seems to blur. Those who labor within its walls have stories that chill the very marrow of one's bones. An entity from the, depths of the past, seemingly from the early 1900s, tends to emerge from the shadows. Witnesses have reported sightings of this specter, donned in a timeless suit that echoes an era long past. But it's not just apparitions that haunt this courthouse. It's the inexplicable phenomena that defies the laws of physics. Doors, once left ajar, abruptly close of their own volition, and objects, seemingly devoid of reason, plummet to the ground. Surveillance cameras bore witness to the eerie descent of a donation jar in a bowl on an x-ray machine, casting aside any doubts of, a natural explanation. It went from being, there to and there was nobody there. For the courthouse's, beleaguered employees, such occurrences are far from isolated incidents. They become the unsettling rhythm of daily life. When the donation jar defies gravity's grasp and crashes, echoing in the empty halls, it serves as a reminder that here, the ordinary has become the extraordinary. One tale recounted by a brave employee takes us into the restroom, where the mundane transitions into the uncanny. While standing alone, she felt an invisible hand tugging at her hair, a sensation that defies rational explanation. In that moment, the solitude of the restroom was shattered by an unseen presence, a ghostly interloper, if you will. Maintenance man Kenneth Schaefer, no stranger to the courthouse's peculiarities, speaks of doors that defy logic. They stand ajar, only to slam shut as if guided by an unseen hand. A stroll through the courtroom can send shivers down one's spine, as an unexplainable chill pierces through their very being, as if the air itself bears the weight of restless spirits. The history of the Otero County Courthouse is steeped in the echoes of the past. A modern structure completed in 1956, it stands upon the remnants of an earlier courthouse, constructed between 1901 and 1903. But it's the specter of a troubled soul from the 1960s or 70s that lingers, a man who chose to end his own life. His presence, or perhaps his torment, has seeped into the very foundations of that place. In the courthouse, the veil between the corporeal and the ethereal grows very, very thin. Number 4, Monroe County Courthouse in Arkansas. The Monroe County Courthouse, a seemingly innocuous edifice, conceals a sinister past that continues to haunt its halls to this day. In the year 1898, the courthouse bore witness to a gruesome racial killing that birthed the malevolent spirits that now reside within. Ghost Eyes, the, harbinger of the eerie, divulges stories of mournful cries emanating from its basement, serving as a chilling reminder of that fateful day. What transpired here was a harrowing sequence of events that shook the very foundation of this community. The roots of this macabre tale stretch back to the troubled household of John and Mabel Orr, where domestic discord festered like a dark omen. John, an actor by profession, was rumored to have subjected his wife Mabel to unspeakable cruelty, igniting violent clashes that punctuated their marriage. However, on that fateful August 5th, fate would deliver a gruesome twist. An unknown assailant shattered the, tranquility of their home, taking John's life in a horrifying manner through the kitchen window. Rumors swirled like malevolent spirits, suggesting Mabel's complicity in her husband's demise, intertwined with the ominous presence of voodoo. As the shadows deepened, Mabel's fate took a sinister turn. Mabel, ensnared by the tendrils of guilt and despair, chose to end her own life, poisoning herself in the bleak confines of the courthouse's basement jail. But the horrors were far from over. 4 servants of the Orr family, Mance Castle, Will Sanders, Rilla Weaver, Sanders' mother, and Dennis Rickard, found themselves incarcerated alongside the tormented spirit of Mabel. The abyss of human darkness consumed them as a meticulously organized mob descended upon the jail, snatching these souls from their mortal coil on August 9th. The maid, Susie Jacobs, also met her gruesome end at the hands of this merciless assembly. The Encyclopedia of Arkansas History and Culture recounts the grim spectacle of Mabel's lifeless form, put on grisly display within the courthouse, serving as a grim testament that she had not escaped her tormentors. The courthouse, once a symbol of justice, now stands as a malevolent sentinel, guarding the secrets of that gruesome summer. Number 3, Navajo County Courthouse in Arizona. Within the haunted tales of American courthouses, the old Navajo County Courthouse emerges as a sinister enigma, where the spirit of George Smiley is said to linger. Smiley's grim fate was sealed when he faced a death sentence for the killing of a railroad foreman, a crime that would shroud the courthouse in an unsettling legacy. Sheriff Frank Watron's macabre sense of humor cast an eerie pall over Smiley's impending execution. He dispatched gilded invitations for the hanging, a grotesque spectacle set for November 11th of 1899. But this twisted jest proved too much for the sensibilities of President McKinley and Governor Nathan Murphy, who swiftly reprimanded Watron, postponing the execution. In response, the sheriff issued another set of invitations, this time veiled in mournful language and adorned with a black border, signaling the ultimate demise of George Smiley on January 8th of 1900. But, the story doesn't end with Smiley's execution. According to a column in the Examiner, the old courthouse now houses the local historical society, but its halls are far from quiet. Eerie noises reverberate throughout the building, and objects move of their own accord, as if guided by unseen hands. It is here that these spectral roommates, including George Smiley and Sheriff Watron himself, are said to coexist in the realm of the beyond, their presence an enduring enigma. Far from the dusty trails of Navajo County, the Lincoln County Courthouse in Wiscasset, Maine, harbors its own spectral mysteries. In 2011, the courthouse was thrown into a state of disquiet when a motion-sensitive security camera captured eerie footage. County Commissioner Sheridan Bond, armed with a magnifying glass, scrutinized a still frame from the recording, believing he could see a spectral visage within the mysterious entity. Others, although uncertain about the existence of a face, agreed that the camera unequivocally captured something that we can't explain. Oh, the eerie occurrences doesn't end there. That's way too easy. Workers in the district attorney's office have reported sightings of a shadowy figure, manifesting in the late afternoon and early evening, casting a chilling pall over the courthouse. WCSH, the local station, embarked on a quest to, unveil the identity of the entity haunting the courthouse. However, their efforts yielded no definitive answers. The enigma persists, shrouded in the mists of time and history. The courthouse itself, with its origins dating back to 1824, has borne witness to a multitude of souls, some incarcerated, others executed, their stories etched into the very walls of the building. Number 2, Dacia County Courthouse in Arkansas. So, nestled in the heart of Arkansas City, this courthouse holds a spectral secret that has intrigued ghost hunters and courthouse workers alike. Here, the haunting presence of a ghost known as Willard weaves its haunting tapestry throughout the building, defying the bounds of human logic. Local legend intertwines with the supernatural in a tale that centers around the courthouse's clock tower. An unsettling belief holds that the clock, perched high in its tower, has been cursed since the turn of the 20th century. The curse, it is said, was cast by a condemned man who met his grisly end on the courthouse lawn. The alleged arson of a string of hotels, a charge he vehemently denied. In a curious twist, County Judge Mark McElroy once made a campaign promise to mend the clock, as reported by, the local Gazette. However, the appointed clock technician, tasked with repairing the timepiece, dispelled the supernatural aura surrounding it. In his words, back in the old days, they probably did hang somebody out there on the front of the courthouse, or on the steps of the courthouse, or up in the tower of the courthouse, or whatever. I don't dispute that one bit, and the guy may have cursed them on the clock, but that's not the problem with the clock. It's just an old clock, and it needs tender loving care. All of them are that way. Alright, pal. The cryptic saga of the county courthouse embodies the confluence of folklore, history, and the supernatural. Willard's ghostly presence lingers, a reminder that even in the realm of the mundane, the boundaries between fact and legend can blur. Whether it's a cursed clock or the echoes of a tragic past, the courthouse stands as a testament to the enduring mysteries that shroud these haunted halls. Number 1, Mitchell Courthouse in Baltimore. In the corridors of the Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. Courthouse, nestled in Baltimore, Maryland, a spectral presence is said to roam an apparition of historical significance. Supreme Court Justice Roger B. Taney, infamous for the polarizing, Dred Scott decision, is believed to be the source of the unexplained phenomena that has unnerved those who tread upon this hallowed legal ground. Attorney Adam Sean Cohen's harrowing experience within these haunted walls serves as a testament to the otherworldly ambiance that permeates the courthouse. So during a court proceeding, Cohen was gripped by an inexplicable dread, likening the sensation to the frigid aura of a grocery store's frozen food section, where the coldness surrounds you while warmth beckons from within. Overwhelmed by this uncanny sensation, Cohen abruptly left the courtroom, a decision unimaginable in normal circumstances, as judges are typically treated with the utmost, respect. Circuit Judge Wanda Keys Heard, presiding over the proceedings, showed a remarkable understanding of Cohen's abrupt exit. She herself believes that the courthouse is under the spectral watch of justice, that has passed, whose name I don't want to bugger up again. This belief is underscored by the presence of, the name etched upon the dome of the courthouse, a chilling reminder of the historical legacy that lingers. Heard, a descendant of those who endured the dark days of, bad things, humorously speculated that this guy might harbor some reservations about her role in the legal proceedings. However, a curious twist emerges when the courthouse's historian sheds light on the situation. While this ghostly presence is rumored to haunt the courthouse, historical records reveal a peculiar detail. The esteemed justice was never actually inside the courthouse during his lifetime. The courthouse itself was constructed in 900, long after this man's passing in 1864. Instead, it was a neighboring building, now demolished, where this presence resided, a location that has seemingly left quite the mark on the surrounding area. The spectral enigma of the courthouse serves as a chilling reminder that history has a peculiar way of transcending time and place. place. This justice's ghostly presence, though physically distant from the courthouse itself, continues to cast its ethereal shadow over the legal proceedings that unfold within its walls. It's a testament to the enduring influence of the past, one that defies the constraints of time and logic, leaving those who dare to enter these haunted halls with an unsettling sense of history's weight. In fifth, we have the Most Holy Trinity Church in New York, built sometime between 1882 and 1885 on land that previously served as a graveyard until 1853. According to local rumors, not all of the bodies residing there were exhumed from the graveyard, and the spirits of those left behind still inhabit the grounds to this day. The church property covers an entire city block, and it is said that there are false closets leading to bricked-up doorways, tunnels, and random sub-basements throughout the church and convent. There are also mysterious passageways on the upper levels of the church, where legend says only priests are able to enter. The church's rectory was built in 1872 by its second pastor, Monsignor Michael May, who later passed in his room on the second floor. Priests who live in the rectory have used that space for mainly a guest room ever since, as no one has ever been willing to live in it on an ongoing basis. Guests have experienced lights being switched off and on, hearing strange noises, and the sound of a person walking back and forth while trying to sleep. Phantom footsteps have also been heard on the staircases in the building, and dogs who were once kept as pets in the rectory would stare in a trance-like state down the basement stairs, as well as into the dining room when the building got cold. In 1897, a parish bell ringer named George Stell's life was taken in the vestibule of the church. Though there was a suspect in the case, a former parishioner who would later be executed for an unrelated ending of life, no one was ever convicted of the crime. The red fluids of Mr. Stell's, as well as the red handprint of the killer, is believed to still be on the wall in a stairway leading to the bell tower. George's ghost still roams the church and is believed to be the reason why the bells will ring suddenly, vowing not to leave until his death has been solved. Moving on to our fourth place position, we have the Aquia Church of Stafford, Virginia. While the congregation was established in 1711, the physical parish wasn't built until 1751. It was a gorgeous brick building built on a peaceful hilltop with a two-story crucifix floor plan, which otherwise known as a cruciform, which was considered a rather unusual style for colonial churches. Aquia was built to replace two earlier sites of the Overwharton parish, which were constructed around 1680. The inside of the church burned down in 1754 and was not rebuilt until 1757. It was then shut down from the Revolutionary War until the Civil War due to lack of funding, before reopening as a stable, campsite, and hospital for Union forces. It was during this closure that a young blonde woman was traveling the dark country roads, rural Stafford County, when a group of highwaymen accosted her. This time period was full of exasperated uncertainty from the war, and with it a severe lack of resources, food, and money. Men would wait hidden on the side of roads to steal the valuables from people walking or riding by their hiding spots. She ran from the men to the sanctuary of the church, but was only able to hide for a little while before they broke inside and ended her life. Her body was hidden in the tower, and the men were never caught. It wasn't until after the Revolutionary War ended in 1775 and the church was ready to reopen for services that what was left of her was discovered, a skeleton with golden blonde hair that was as intact as if she had been freshly slain. The red fluid that spilled on the floor from her death was impossible to remove. Despite using every trick known to man, the stains remained in the tower for well over 100 years, until during a modern renovation when the redness was covered up by concrete. With the facility still being in use today, members of the church have mentioned hearing footsteps walking around at all hours of the day and will break into a frantic run around the church at night, but no one is there. Noises can be heard in the empty tower, with some saying it sounds like a struggle, others describing a groan, whistle, or even a call for help. Many have also mentioned seeing a transparent woman in the church's windows, on the balcony, or even in the graveyard, dubbing her Blonde Beth after the hair of the skeleton. In the 1900s, brave people would try to stay overnight at the church, but were chased away by what they described as an unfriendly presence. A custodian working in the graveyard saw a ghostly woman's face floating above the graves, while another man saw a woman smiling at him through the balcony windows before she vanished. In the middle of this creepy sandwich, in third place, we're taking a closer look at St. St. Mary the Virgin, located on the outskirts of Clophill, England. Originally built facing the west sometime around the year 1350, it's believed to have been erected on top of a leper hospital run by monks. I'd like to take a moment to note that it was built in the quote-unquote wrong direction, with churches traditionally facing east, the direction from which the sun rises, which is associated with the location of heaven and the return of the Messiah in Christian religion. Altars inside of these holy buildings would face in the eastbound direction for prayers. Some have claimed that because St. Mary the Virgin faces away from God, it thus opens its doors to hell, and ergo responsible for the tale I'm about to tell. The building was abandoned in 1848 when the rector at the time made the decision to have a new church built, instead of expanding the previous one, which was much needed due to the rapidly growing congregation. Old St. Mary's, as was dubbed by the locals, was then primarily used as a mortuary chapel, holding bodies before they were buried in the adjacent cemetery. By the 1950s, St. Mary's had become so run down that it could no longer fulfill that use, with just the outdoor walls and tower remaining. In March 1963, the tomb of an 18th century apothecary's wife was broken into, and the bones were arranged ritualistically in the middle of the church. And once again, on Midsummer's Eve of 1969, multiple women's graves were broken into, with bones being removed and rearranged once more. While the specific individuals involved in these acts were never identified, the arrangements found resembled those used in black mass rituals performed by satanic groups at the time. After the first incident in 1963, a rare decision was made to rehollow, or in more simple terms, re-bless the altar that was left in the building, in a failed attempt to protect the building from evil. Later that year, Reverend Harold Colthurst reported stumbling upon a group of men in the building that were in the midst of a mysterious ritual, being quoted as saying that the men were trying to communicate with evil spirits, chanting some sort of mumbo-jumbo. They were definitely in league with the devil. Modern-day visitors to the now landmark have reported seeing a plethora of ghostly figures during the day and nighttime, faint lights moving about before vanishing mysteriously, along with reports of a chilly and oppressive atmosphere even during warm days. In second place, we're visiting l'Abbaye de Mortemer, or Mortimer Abbey. It was originally built in 1134 on land gifted by King Henry I. The stagnant water of the drainage lake, which was dug out by the monks to dry up the marshy land, was called Mortemer, or the Dead Pond, giving the monastery its name. Totally not ominous or anything. The monks constructed what was then one of the largest monasteries in the world on said land. The legend says that after the passing of his only son, King Henry wanted to reform his daughter Matilda and had her locked in a room in the abbey for 5 years. The anger and hate she felt from being sent away and isolated stained and seeped into the walls of the monastery, cursing it for eternity. After her eventual release, she went on to live until 1167, when it said her spirit returned to Mortimer Abbey to haunt the area as the White Lady. She is said to appear on nights close to a full moon, moaning as she drifts through the now ruins of the monastery. Those that have seen her report that she alternates between wearing black and white gloves. If she appears to you with white gloves on, you're destined for good luck. But if she appears with black, you'll be expected to pass within a year. Alas, Matilda is not the only spirit one must worry about if visiting the abbey. When the monastery was at its peak in the 1500s, a frail and suffering woman was brought to the monks with an illness it was believed that only they could aid. It was revealed that she was possessed by the spirit of a wolf and cursed to become a werewolf for several nights. The monks chained her to a room and conducted multiple exorcisms in an attempt to eradicate the spirit. The monks were able to exorcise the evil wolf spirit or demonic force out of the woman, but it then attached itself to the grounds and walls of the monastery. Several hundred years later, in 1884, a man named Roger Saboureau was hunting in the woods nearby when he was attacked by a large werewolf. He shot it multiple times, killing the creature, but when he returned home at dawn, he found the body of his wife bearing wounds matching those he had given the wolf. People say the spirit of Roger's wife and his own heartbroken spirit still wander the area when the moon is full. The abbey was exorcised by the church in 1921, but still remains haunted to this day. And coming in first place, we have the Abbey of the Black Hag, locally known as Monasterngallagduff. Please don't curse me for my pronunciation, St. Catherine's Abbey, or simply as Old Abbey. It's located roughly 2 miles east of the village of Shanagolden, in the townland of Old Abbey. Gee, can you tell where it got its name? One of the earliest recorded nunneries in Ireland, with its first official record being around 1298, it was built on land donated by John Fitzthomas, and has the typical layout for abbeys of its time, with a dining hall, cells, isolated meditation areas, and other rooms still able to be identified amongst the ruins today. During the 15th century, there was a major battle for supremacy in the area between the Earl Fitzgerald and the prestigious Butler family, of which the Earldom of Ormond belonged. It got to such an extent that the local bishop was known to pray for peace between the families at masses. During one of the nightly attacks, Earl Fitzgerald attempted to get his wife to safety, but as he was pulling her onto his horse, an arrow pierced her thigh, shattering the bone and spraying red bodily fluids. As he rode on, the Countess appeared to have succumbed to her injury, leading the Earl to seek sanctuary at St. Catherine's. The heartbroken man was certain his wife had passed, so he swiftly buried her beneath the altar and continued elsewhere to find safety. As the night went on, the nuns and residents began to hear hair-raising screams and made the decision to rebury the Countess in hopes of bringing her peace. When they dug up the body, they discovered her fingers were broken and her nails had been torn off. The poor woman had been buried alive, with a very slow and torturous end of her life. To this day, it is believed that the Countess has been unable to find peace and continues to scream in anguish, waiting for her husband to save her from a fate truly worse than death. Moving slightly ahead in time, we come to the Black Nun herself. Described as one in the order that wasn't content with being humble, helping others over herself, and the servitude to God, she instead craved power. The hag had her own cell, where she worshipped Satan and performed black magic, becoming a slave to the occult. This was the highest form of blasphemy in the church, and the other nuns in the order fled the abbey, while the hag remained in her now house of darkness. To complete her rituals, the Black Nun would venture into the local community and perform depraved, lewd acts and offer sacrifices, with bones of young community members later discovered on the grounds. In modern times, visitors have reported seeing the dark, shadowy figure of a nun wandering, the feeling of being constantly watched, and a disembodied hand reaching towards them. It has been reported that flashlights cannot function in the nun's cell, and modern batteries drain too quickly to have any sort of rational explanation.
Number 5 on this list is the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum. Located in Australia, this is one of the most haunted asylums in the entire world. Thrillist says, formerly the Mayday Hills Lunatic Asylum, now La Trobe University's scenic Beechworth campus, this place saw 128 years of terror before closing in 1995. Apparently 9,000 patients died here over the years, and people were so fast and loose with the term lunatic that few patients ever left the premises alive. It comes as no surprise that a few people lingered after death. Faces floating in windows are a common sight, along with Matron Sharp doing her rounds and children laughing. Tommy Kennedy, who used to transport the dead out of the asylum and died there himself, still hangs around. There's also a woman who was thrown out of a window and died in front of the hospital because she was Jewish and the only person allowed to move her, a rabbi, couldn't make it to Beechworth sooner. Yeah, so clearly this place has seen its fair share of trauma throughout the years, folks. 9,000 people is a lot of people who have died. Like, we're talking about a small town's worth of human beings who died at this freaking asylum. And as exampled by that poor Jewish woman, these deaths weren't all from natural causes either. There was said to be some sick workers here, people who were twisted and got off on hurting others, people who worked at the asylum but probably would have been better suited to be in it themselves. Asylums in general are already susceptible to haunting considering what's going on, but when you have this amount of death and atrocities take place, it just makes it that much easier for ghosts and paranormal entities to cling on. Many of the locals don't even come close to this place anymore, and a lot of the tourists who do go here thoroughly regret that decision soon afterwards. These entities are angry and want to punish those who are living for what happened way back then. I don't recommend being one of the people who gets punished. Number 4 on this list is the Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital. If you had a mental illness, then I promise you this is not where you wanted to end up. Thrillist says, believed to be one of the most haunted spots in South Korea, this abandoned psych hospital could be the basis for the next Stephen King novel based on its checkered history. According to local lore, patients here began dying mysterious deaths one after the other, forcing the facility to shut down. Many believe the murderous owners of the place was to blame, claiming that he kept patients as hostages only to flee to the States when families of the deceased demanded explanations. There are also rumors of doctors going insane, rivaling their patients in madness. So literally folks, if you ended up here, then there was a pretty good chance that not only did you not get the help that you needed, but you also just died. Whether this was because of the sick owners or the doctors, who even knows? That much death has left behind its mark though, and now this place looks like a safe haven for ghosts and everything paranormal. There's also been talk of a creature that lurks here, a creature that was actually the cause of all this death to begin with and is lurking, waiting for somebody to stop by and take them next. If I was you, I wouldn't want to be that person. Number 3 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. This is a scary masterpiece, folks. Thrillist says, this impressive structure, allegedly the world's second largest hand-cut stone masonry building after the Kremlin, looks like it was designed as the set of a blockbuster thriller. Built around the Civil War era, the asylum was designed to house around 250 patients, but ended up holding more than 2,400, including for a brief period, the infamous Charles Manson. That's the opposite of a celebrity endorsement. Along with severe overcrowding, profound abuse abounded. People were locked in cages, lobotomized with ice picks, chained to things, and the combination led to hundreds of deaths and a palpable air of suffering. Apparitions are aplenty, like the still deranged patient Ruth who likes to attack visitors. And since the asylum was also briefly a Civil War military base, uniformed soldier ghosts roam the halls. Thousands have claimed to hear voices telling them to get out. Civil War themed ghost tours, tours of the medical center, forensic buildings and geriatrics buildings, and zombie events and balls fully play up the twisted history on the campus grounds. Now, don't get me wrong, would it be really fun to be part of a zombie event at this place? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm also not trying to get attacked by Ruth, the deranged ghost patient. Whenever people travel to a place like this, there is a risk involved. I personally am not willing to take the risk based on the history that this place has seen. Comment down below if you would. Number 2 on this list is Danvers Lunatic Asylum. This asylum hosted a very select group, criminals. Thrillist says, part prison, part asylum, all terror. This gothic monolith opened in 1878 to house mentally unstable criminals. Thanks to the addition of the mentally handicapped, alcoholics, and plain old felons, it became so severely understaffed by the 1930s that patients' deaths were often not discovered until days later, when they were found rotting in some forgotten corner. Shock therapy and lobotomies were standard procedures. In fact, some call Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. But a large cemetery on site said to be haunted by evil spirits suggests these were not always successful. The sinister castle-like building is said to have inspired H.P. Lovecraft's Arkham Sanitarium, and so also Batman's Arkham Asylum, and was the setting of Demon Movie Session 9. And as if that weren't enough, Danvers used to be Salem Village. Yeah, of Salem witch trials fame. Regular ghosts are one thing, witch ghosts are another one altogether. Think about how few people would have had to work here, where a literal patient would die and wouldn't be discovered until days later. And also think about what that would have meant for the actual patients. That means that even if you were still alive, you probably wouldn't be treated or seen by a professional for days at a time. Which also means that you might not eat for days at a time either, and be stuck in what I can only assume would have been a cell by yourself for that entire time. This would have been a horrible place to go, even if it was just for criminals. Because of all of this, it is now deeply haunted and a place I highly recommend avoiding. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. This is an asylum that I've talked about a few times on this channel before, which speaks to how haunted it actually is. Thrillist says, with an alleged 63,000 deaths taking place inside its walls, this place is up to its eyeballs in spirits, not surprisingly topping lists of America's most haunted spots. Originally built as a tuberculosis hospital in 1910, the building saw many die from the disease, but tales of mistreatment and dubious human experimentation trickled out, and patients left the premises in what was known as the death tunnel or body chute. Apparitions including Timmy, a boy who likes to play with rubber balls who's been caught on tape, the nurse who hanged herself in room 502, another nurse who fell from the same room's window, and scattered screams and footsteps have all been seen. 63,000 deaths. And here we were thinking that the 9,000 in the other place was bad, here's 63,000 more. Any place that has a death tunnel and a body chute, that should not be a place meant for rehabilitation and seeking help. We are talking about some sick stuff that went on here. I would get into some of the rumors associated with the human experimentation, but I honestly don't think that YouTube would let this video stay up if I did. There are a plethora of ghostly spirits that haunt this place now. Dark spirits that have lost all sense of humanity and are more demon than spirit. This is a spot that must be avoided at all costs. Number 5. Bannack, Montana. Coming up first on our list of abandoned towns that might be home to something sinister is Bannack, Montana. This town is a notable hotspot for paranormal enthusiasts, due in part to featuring on Zach Bagans' ghost adventures, and if he was involved, you know it's legitimate. It was founded in 1862, when John White discovered there was gold on Grasshopper Creek and the bells rang and all the prospectors rushed into them hills to strike gold and make it big. After that fortunate discovery, Bannack became your typical gold rush community in the Wild West. That means a lot of people with missing teeth and big straw hats came in to come swing pickaxes at rocks looking for gold. An onset of prospectors and money meant that two-bit hoodlums and varmints were soon to follow. The roads leading up to Bannack became a dangerous place, where holdups, robberies, and all kinds of high noon trouble became common. It became infamous as one of the most dangerous parts of Montana. The route leading into it had more robberies than any other stagecoach route in the country at the time. And the wildest thing about this already pretty Wild West tale is that the leader of the outlaws that had been raiding the stagecoaches on Bannack was Bannack's own sheriff. That is incredible. That's an M. Night Shyamalan twist. Certainly explains why they were able to get away with it for so long. Now, with such a storied and troubled history of violence surrounding the town, is it any wonder that it's speculation that it's haunted? By the late 1860s, Bannack's gold rush began to fade, and it started to lose importance as a mining community to bigger things like Virginia City. While there were still people living in it all the way up until the 1950s, its trade diminished greatly. Less gold, less money, less people, less crime, fortunately enough, but less of a community. Eventually, the last few residents were displaced and the town would be converted into a state park. You can visit the decaying town now, kept preserved as if people should live there but don't. In a way, Bannack is much like these lives of all those prospectors and hopefuls, cut short tragically, existing now just as a spooky memory of a different time. And if you're looking for more spooky stories, well, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. We've got a little bit of everything that freaks you out. Aliens, cryptids, ghosts, goblins, conspiracies. If it's spooky, we've got a video or two on it. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that bell, and don't miss a single scream out of us. But hey, do that at the end of this video, okay? I got way more ghost towns coming up for you. Well, 4. I got 4 more ghost towns coming up for you. Number 4, Pripyat. You can't really have a video on scary ghost towns without including the most infamous ghost town in history, maybe. It both seems like it's a cop-out to list it and also a mistake to ignore it. It's everybody's favorite irradiated town, Pripyat in Chernobyl. While reading about Chernobyl, I was introduced to the word kenopsia, which I hadn't heard before, meaning the feeling of seeing something that you know is supposed to be bustling and populated but isn't. And I think there are few places on Earth that match that description quite like the exclusion zone. You look at it, and it seems like everybody literally left in a second, leaving behind their personal belongings, their things. It seems like at any moment, Chernobyl should come back to life, but won't. A safety test simulating a station blackout power failure would lead to a cataclysmic fire, leading to radioactive material being blown all over Pripyat and the surrounding areas, making it an inhospitable wasteland. 50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town. Yeah, that line is from Call of Duty. I did steal that. Now, Chernobyl, despite the fact that it is literally an irradiated wasteland straight out of the movies, is an above-average popular site for tourists and would-be stalkers who want to explore around the exclusion zone for fun. I kind of understand it. I think I'd want to stand around, look around a bit, take it all in, and then immediately get out of there and go to a doctor. I'm not sure I'd spend too much time there personally. Now, as one might imagine, visiting the zone isn't as simple as walking on in and buying a ticket. For starters, the country is kind of busy right now, so not really the best time. But if you were to go, you're advised strongly to go with a guide or someone who knows the area very well due to how dangerous and unknown everything is out there. Avoid touching anything unnecessary, vegetation, or the wild dogs that roam the streets. They're very cute, but their fur is just a little bit too irradiated for me. You gotta wear boots, a mask, and an outfit that covers as much as possible to avoid any dust. You're asked not to enter buildings without approval, since some of them are so degraded that they could collapse under you at any second like the worst game of Jenga. It's kinda hard to look at stuff of Chernobyl and not feel like a pit in your stomach, you know? Looking at what happens when human indifference wreaks unspeakable havoc to the lands around it, poisoning the earth forever, radiating the animals, destroying people's homes and lives, and
This ended on a bit of a bleak note, didn't it? I'm sorry, this list of abandoned towns hasn't been more fun. I did try to look if maybe there was like an abandoned circus or like an abandoned Toys R Us that would have been fun to talk about, but it's mostly going to be irradiated wastelands and places where everybody died. Sorry. Number 3, Centralia, Pennsylvania. Coming up next on this list of spooky ghost towns is going to be Centralia in Pennsylvania. Now, as far as ghost towns go, Centralia's got a bit of the Hollywood bug, serving as the inspiration for the titular town in the 2006 horror flick Silent Hill. Now, as a Silent Hill mega fan, I feel the need to point out the video game version isn't based on this town, but it is mostly based on Kindergarten Cop. Look that up, it's a weird thing, but the school in Silent Hill, school in Kindergarten Cop, I don't know. Now, Centralia, back to this one, was a once flourishing community wrecked by a coal mine fire that destroyed the town, leaving only fog and ash raining over the skies. In 1962, a fire started in a landfill and spread to the coal tunnels that lay deep beneath the city, thousands of feet below the surface of the town. Rescue crews tried their best to put out the raging flame, but the flame was too mighty to be quelled and eventually caught a coal seam that's still burning to this day. The town was abandoned. Windows boarded up, debris left in the roads, and never-ending clouds of smoke and fog circling the cracked roads, really getting that Silent Hill feeling. Now, on paper, Centralia does not exist. The government removed its zip code, offices and buildings have all been abandoned, there's no services whatsoever. If you dial 911 in Centralia, nothing's gonna happen. The town has no infrastructure, so to speak of. It's a sad story, another disaster upending a town and the life that the residents had. Now, although the town was evacuated, there are a few clingers who refuse to give up on the life they've known. Perhaps it's rebellion or sheer stubbornness, but there are still a handful of people living in Centralia. The last census said that there were 5 homes that still had people living in them. Talk about a small town, I bet everybody knows each other. While everyone else fled, these last few loyalists intend to live out the rest of their days in Centralia, refusing to let the town be taken from them. So no demonic entities in Centralia, really, just some very tired residents who won't give up the ghost. If you ever visit, make sure to be nice, okay? I feel like they've been through a lot. Number 2, Varosha, Cyprus. Coming up next on our list is going to be Varosha in Cyprus. Once a shining playground for the glitzy and glamorous, this paradisal resort in the Mediterranean was a popular spot for the celebrities of yesteryear in the 1970s to get away from it all and put their feet up and stop worrying about the daily stresses of having a lot of money and being a movie star. That kind of lifestyle's taxing. The suburbs enjoyed a thriving tourist economy, with the golden sands and beachfront hotels being a force in enticing people to come. Of course, fame is fleeting and nothing in this world lasts forever, like celebrity resort towns. In 1974, Turkey would invade Cyprus and occupy the north in a response to a Greek nationalist-led coup. So the 15,000 people that lived in Varosha all up and fled the city in terror, leaving everything behind as it stood. Unfortunately, years of political strife and controversies in the area kept Varosha's residents from ever returning to their homes, leaving the city to rot in open air and decompose into a wasteland. One look at Varosha and it just seems like a tragic waste, trying to wrap your head around the money, livelihoods, industry, all just lost forever. It's a very eerie feeling looking at the photos of Varosha, seeing the earth try to take the city back. Buildings crumbling, trees sprouting through the bottom floors of cafes and restaurants. Well, why not just go in, fix the place up a little, you know, sweep up, clean it? Well, decades of neglect have done inconceivable damage to the infrastructure. The city has crumbled and wasted away so much that experts estimate that it would take upwards of $12 billion to make the decrepit city livable once again. So for the time being, it'll probably remain as a time capsule, frozen from better years where things were bright for this forgotten city. Number 1, Oradour sur Glace. Our final entry for this list today is going to be the somber story of the village of Oradour sur Glace, an abandoned town in France, infamous for being host to one of the worst massacres in French history during the Second World War. It's believed the attack was an act of revenge because of the village's support of the resistance. So as retaliation, German soldiers rounded up 642 residents and killed them, and burned the houses to the ground. Some were fired at, while others were locked in a church that was burned. The only people from the village who managed to survive the horror were those that played possum and fled out into surrounding forests after the invading soldiers had all left. After the war had ended, nearby, there was a new Oradour sur Glace built nearby. But the original village, what's left of it at least, was ordered to be left untouched by President Charles de Gaulle, who insisted the village must be left standing as a monument to honor the dead who had been wrongfully taken too early. So, not quite a ghost town in the sense that there's stories of hauntings or chills through the night, but haunting in a certain sense, definitely.
Number 5 on this list is Pink Place Market. This would be a really nice place to do your shopping if it wasn't so freaking haunted. Mental Floss says, as one of the most famous public markets in the country, Pike Place Market is known for a lot of things. Fresh coffee, fresher fish, and paranormal activity. The Seattle Times reported on a number of figures who supposedly walk through walls or vanish into thin air. One older gentleman named Frank apparently likes to introduce himself to the living outside of a restaurant at the Alibi Room. Various other spirits also have names, like Princess Angeline, Madame Nora, and the Fat Lady Barber. At one point in the early 1900s, one section of the market was home to a mortuary. Currently operating in the basement of that space is Kell's Irish Restaurant and Pub. Its manager, Patrick McAleese, recalled some eerie instances to the Times, such as a wall mirror inexplicably shattering, only to have the shards fall into a neat pile. You think someone must be pulling your leg, he said, but then you don't see anyone. So it seems that we have a full-on team of ghosts here. A small village of characters who are all moving around this mall marketplace in Seattle. Because there are so many of these paranormal entities, it makes it extremely difficult for anyone to get any shopping done without having some type of ghostly interference. You can't seem to get a good coffee here without a strong side of haunting along with it. There have been multiple attempts to rid the area of ghosts, but it just simply won't do. No matter how many experts are brought in here to cleanse the area or to put these spirits at rest, they continue to terrorize the people here, which is really too bad because from what I've heard, they have some really nice shops in here. Number 4 on this list is COS. So this is a big store in New York that has quite the haunted and terrifying history to it. Mental Floss says, New Yorkers can brush elbows with a ghost while doing some light shopping in Soho. The legend dates back to 1799 when Gulielma Elmore Sands tried to elope with her fellow boarding house tenant Levi Weeks. 11 days later, her body was found at the bottom of the well in Lispenard's Meadows, which is now 129 Spring Street. Since 2014, it's been the site of a COS retail store. Levi was arrested, tried, and acquitted in the first major murder trial in America that was fully recorded by a court stenographer. His attorneys, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. But Sands Ghost is said to roam the area, a warning to other girls who might try to run off with their lovers. Curious shoppers can still see the well in COS. Just head to the back of the men's department in the basement. Okay, so I have a few questions with this one. Why, after someone was literally murdered here, do we still have this death well in this store? And also, what is a well doing in a store in the first place? Like, I get that it was the 1800s or whatever, but like, we just kept that thing as time went on. Someone literally died in that thing, and now people are wondering why there are ghosts around this place. Like, no wonder Sands Ghosts is still chilling in this area. Even she is probably wondering why this well is still here. Also, can I just make a comment about ghosts in general? I get that they want to warn us about stuff and all of that, but like, why can't they just leave us a nice note or, I don't know, sit down and have a conversation? Why do they need to freak the hell out of people and just leave people confused as to what they want? Anyways, this place is going to remain haunted for a while until someone deals with that well. I'd conduct your shopping elsewhere if I was you. Number 3 on this list is the Cherryvale Mall. This is just a mall that for whatever reason has decided that it wants to be haunted. Mental Floss says, since its opening in 1973, the Cherryvale Mall in Rockford, Illinois has been the site of some spooky vibes. The Rock River Times noted that mall employees reported feeling watched or followed after the venue closed at night. Others have reported that certain stores would be a mess in the morning with clothing scattered or displays knocked over, even if the space was cleaned before being locked up. And on an even more unsettling note, some even claimed that bathroom doors were held shut by an unknown force. So basically, for no good reason, this mall is just haunted now. Now it's either that or this mall is just regularly hit with burglary. Maybe the things are moved because people have been stealing stuff and then just don't put everything back the way that they found it when they first got there. Or, and this one's a long shot, but some people are just pranking the hell out of this mall and creating the legend of a haunting here for some reason. Like a Scooby-Doo-esque vibe where they're really trying to do something else at the mall and need people to leave it alone because they're scared. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of some reason why this mall would be haunted because there really isn't a good one. Comment down below if you guys know what could be causing this mall to be the way that it is. Number 2 on this list is the Diamond Center. The Diamond Center is located in Anchorage, Alaska, and it's very haunted. Alaska doesn't have that many people that live there. It's the largest state in America, and yet it has less than 1 million residents, which just makes what they did with this mall so much more disrespectful. A golden rule of thumb is do not build big stuff on top of ancient Native American burial sites. Well, guess what? They built the Diamond Mall on an ancient burial ground of Native Alaskans. Sure enough, what happens when you do that? Well, some pretty bad things. This mall is almost impossible to shop in now because of this, and honestly, rightfully so. You should never be building stuff on this land to begin with, but just think about how big Alaska is and how few people live there. Like, guys, we couldn't have just moved the mall a kilometer that way and built it over there? I mean, I think that you have the space for it considering you're freaking Alaska. Ghosts and spirits run rampant here, and many visitors and employees have had harrowing experiences with them. Some have even reported being attacked by these spirits and been told that they have to leave. Sadly, these people don't control what the mall does, and now that it's been put down, the wealthy people who own it, they don't seem to care about these ghostly appearances. And finally, number 1 on this list is Toys R Us. So I know that Toys R Us isn't necessarily a mall, but to a kid it certainly is, and let me tell you, if you're a child, then do not go to this specific Toys R Us. The one that I'm talking about is located in Sunnyvale, California, and it's very haunted. Mental Floss says, a haunted toy store sounds like a solid horror movie plot, but it's rumored to be a reality in Sunnyvale, California. According to Stranger Dimensions, the legend goes as such. The store was built on property that was formerly a plantation. The plantation's owner, Martin Murphy, hired a preacher named Johnny Johnson. Crazy Johnny, as the preacher was nicknamed, was in love with Murphy's daughter, Elizabeth. Unfortunately, Elizabeth was planning on marrying a lawyer, and as the story has it, Johnny was angrily chopping wood one day and fatally wounded himself by accident. His ghost reportedly wanders the land now home to the Toys R Us looking for Elizabeth. The usual objects coming off the shelves and footsteps have been reported, but the best anecdote was of employees once hearing a voice whisper, "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away," over the intercom system. Imagine hearing that over the intercom. How on earth could you ever show up to your work the next day? Like, that's it, guys. I am done. I am fully out of there if that's what's coming on over the intercom. I also want to know, what is this ghost referencing? What is he planning on giving, or what's he planning on taking away? Unless he really is just citing the Lord and saying that. Toy stores are supposed to be ghost-free. There isn't supposed to be some haunted menace terrorizing the people who come and work here. That isn't the case at the Sunnyvale Toys R Us. And that's why I'd be buying my toys elsewhere if I was you. But
McCamey Manor. Alrighty, before somebody yells at me, yes, this place does market themselves as a haunted house, or, to quote the founder Russ, a survival horror performance house, and they're currently offering 20 grand to anyone who can survive 10 hours of their games. Granted, if you curse or fail a challenge, $500 gets removed each time. Also, I've had a personal vendetta against them for almost 10 years now, and that's about to come into play. Founder Russ McCamey, a former Navy seaman turned haunted attraction enthusiast, doesn't accept any kind of money for this unique experience. Payment is simply a can or bag of dog food. There is a screening process first. Participants must produce a doctor's note, sign a 40-page waiver, pass a background check and drug test, and be screened via FaceTime. A guide has testified that the 40-page waiver signed by participants lists possible risks, that include having teeth extracted, being tattooed, and having fingernails removed. If I didn't already hate the place enough, that does it for me. That's just unnecessary torment. It originally operated in San Diego, but neighbors petitioned to have it run out of the area due to the noise and unsafe attention it brought them, and were successful. There's a total of 3 locations now. Nashville, Tennessee, and Huntsville, Alabama are the 2 that we're going to be talking about though. At the Tennessee location, guests must be 21 or older, or 18 with parental consent, while the Alabama location only allows ages 21 and up. The tour lasts from 8 to 10 hours, but no guest has ever made it all the way through. Now, McCamey originally did not allow safe words for the tour, but has since reportedly allowed them, with guests having the option to use a safe word that ends the tour immediately. The house operates year-round, and there is allegedly a waiting list of over 24,000 people. I just want to know why. During the tour, employees of the manor may physically attack patrons, waterboard them, force them to eat and drink unknown substances, have them bound and gagged, and engage in other forms of physical and psychological anguish. I'm forgetting something. Oh, don't remind me. Oh, right. Participants may also be drugged during their experience. And hey, if that wasn't enough ick for anybody, make sure to remember to smile for the camera while you're enduring this hell. McCamey started filming everything that happened inside the manor as an insurance policy, so he'd have proof of what really happened anytime law enforcement came a-knockin'. In addition, each contestant's experience is live streamed to a Facebook audience of close to 30,000 people. If that's your idea of entertainment, there's a large archive of footage on the official website. So far, no one's been able to escape, and I'm pretty sure everybody leaves with some sort of imprint on their psyche. So big pass from me. Hey, what's creepier than an abandoned schoolhouse with a truly terrifying history? It's hard to think of anything. The Den Schoolhouse is a haunted house attraction set in an actual super spooky haunted house that changes every year, meaning visitors never know what to expect. Imagine a place where the boundary between the living and the dead kind of blurs a little bit, where your heart races and reality morphs into a realm of terror. Nestled in Cincinnati, Ohio, this haunted attraction is not for the faint of heart. The schoolhouse derives its chilling name from a grim past. Once an actual schoolhouse in the early 1800s, it turned into a grim tale of horror and disappearances. Students vanished without a trace, their fate shrouded in mystery. Legends claim that the school's janitor, Charlie, harbored a sinister secret in the basement. Today, the Den Schoolhouse stands as a spine-tingling haunted attraction, drawing brave souls from far and wide. From the moment you step inside, the atmosphere is thick with dread. Dimly lit hallways echo with the distant cries of restless spirits, and you're enveloped in a world where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs. The Den Schoolhouse's sinister reputation stems from its commitment to immersive horror. As you navigate its dark corridors, you'll encounter ghastly apparitions, menacing monsters, and grisly scenes that defy belief. The attention to detail is astonishing, making every room feel like a descent into madness. One of these standout features is the infamous basement, where the malevolent spirit of Charlie is said to dwell. The claustrophobic passages, punctuated by eerie lighting and bone-chilling soundscapes, make it an unforgettable, hair-raising experience. But what truly sets the Den Schoolhouse apart is the dedication of its performers. The actors are masters of their craft, immersing visitors in a chilling narrative that unfolds with each step. They blur the line between fiction and reality, leaving you questioning what's lurking in the shadows, which means job well done. For those who dare to enter, the schoolhouse offers an unforgettable journey into the macabre. It's a place where you might disappear into a world of terror, if only for a night. Kinda like how those students disappeared way back in the day. As you emerge from its haunted halls, your heart pounding and your nerves kinda frayed, you realize that some mysteries are best left unsolved. That is, if you make it out. Pennhurst Asylum. So this asylum is a chilling relic of the past tucked away in Spring City, Pennsylvania, and it beckons the brave and the curious alike. Its ominous history, shrouded in mystery and despair, makes it quite the haunting destination for those willing to, take a little peek around its eerie corridors. Once a state school for the mentally and physically disabled, Pennhurst's dark past is a tale of neglect and suffering. Not unusual, but still stories of mistreatment and torment linger like lingering echoes in its decaying halls. So the place was shuttered in the 80s, which is all too late in my opinion, but the scars it left behind have given birth to something altogether different. Today, Pennhurst Asylum stands as a nightmarish playground for those seeking a brush with the supernatural. From the moment you step onto its grim grounds, you're enveloped in an atmosphere of dread. The abandoned buildings loom, their windows like vacant eyes watching your every move. Inside, the haunting begins. It's a maze of twisted passages, each more unsettling than the last. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on peeling wallpaper and rusted beds, remnants of the institution's grim history. The air is heavy with the weight of the past, and the feeling of being watched is inescapable. But it's, not just the decaying infrastructure that chills the bones at this place. The asylum boasts a family of actors who bring the horrors of its past to life. They portray the former staff and patients, their performances teetering on the edge of reality and fiction. You'll feel their anguish and torment, blurring the lines between history and horror. Well, that is if you make it out. One of these standout features is the infamous Mayflower Hall, known for its particularly intense paranormal activity. Here, visitors have reported unexplained phenomena ranging from whispers, shadowy figures, to unrelenting cold spots. Ooh bother. It's a place where the veil between this world and the next seems disturbingly thin. As you navigate the nightmarish landscape, it's pretty easy to get lost in its dark history. The horrors you encounter are a reminder of the institution's grim past, where people were forgotten and suffering was the norm. Some say that those who disappear into Penhurst may never truly leave, their spirits forever bound to its haunted halls. In the end, it stands as a chilling testament to the horrors of the past and the terrors of the unknown. Eloise Psychiatric Hospital was a large complex located in Westland, Michigan that operated from 1839 to early 1982. It started out as a poorhouse and farm and eventually developed into an asylum, sanatorium, and hospital. It's had a lot of names over the years, so bear with me here. In 1832, it was called the Wayne County Poorhouse. In 1872, it was the Wayne County Almshouse. Well, in 1886, it was referred to simply as the Wayne County House. In 1913, there were 3 divisions: the Eloise Hospital, which housed, the mental hospital, the Eloise Infirmary, or the poorhouse, and the Eloise Sanatorium, which housed patients with tuberculosis, and all 3 were collectively called Eloise. Oh, that's not the end of the name changes. In 1945, it was named Wayne County General Hospital and Infirmary at Eloise, Michigan, which, bit of a mouthful. By 1974, it had 2 divisions, separating the Wayne County Psychiatric Hospital from the General Hospital. By 1979, it was officially called Wayne County General Hospital, with the Psychiatric Division closing in 82. In its heyday, Eloise was made up of 78 buildings on 902 acres with 10,000 patients along with 2,000 staff, serving as the largest psychiatric facility in the United States. Only the firehouse, power plant, commissary, and D buildings still stand as of right now, as well as the cemetery. It had some good things back in the day, housing the first kidney dialysis unit in the entire state of Michigan and pioneering the use of music therapy, but they also used, hydrotherapy, shock therapy, and insulin therapy to treat patients. As the years went on, the institution grew larger and larger, which was a reflection in the increases of population in the area. From only 35 residents in 1989, the complex grew to about 10,000 residents at its peak during the Great Depression. Now to talk about the ghosties. My favorite part. Numerous typical poltergeist activities have been witnessed within the complex, with doors slamming and medical carts and tables being overturned. Generally speaking, there are shadow figures that seemingly drip from the ceilings and ooze from the walls of this place, becoming part of the building itself until they are one and the same. 2 ghostly little ones have been seen running the paint-peeling walls of the hallways, turning a corner only to disappear. It's assumed they were inmates at the time Eloise was a poorhouse, where orphans often lived until they were adopted out or passed away. Possibly they died in their youth, or maybe they just relived their lives now without the fear that they had when they were alive. Carelessly playing games in a kind of purgatory. Now there's a mysterious lady that appears as a white vapor and has been seen manifesting within one of the buildings that still stand, and her voice has been recorded as she whispers, "Help." Another ghost is that of a doctor said to prowl the halls of the crumbling facility, and even in the afterlife, he searches for an unfortunate patient to practice his scientific methods. Some have reported seeing a specter drenched in water, possibly a reminder of when hydrotherapy was coming into popularity. Other times, the phantasm is seen wearing a smock stained in red, presumably from a lobotomy. Yoicks. Possibly the doctor lingers, tormented by the ghosts of the patients upon whom he practiced. Nowadays, this building is home to 2 different escape rooms, which is super duper fun. So if you feel like risking the ghost's wrath, that's on you. Good luck making it out. Number 1, the Winchester Mystery House. So the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California is a labyrinth masterpiece of incredible architecture and paranormal intrigue. Its story begins with Sarah Winchester, the widow of the inventor of the famous Winchester rifle. Legend has it that she believed the spirits of those killed by the rifle were haunting her, and her response was to embark on an unceasing construction project that lasted for decades. The house itself is a bewildering marvel, a maze of staircases that lead to nowhere, doors that open into walls, and windows that peer into adjacent rooms. Its design is an enigma, with the hallways doubling back on themselves and secret passages hidden behind bookshelves. But what makes the Winchester Mystery House truly spine-chilling are the rumors of hauntings. Visitors have reported ghostly apparitions, eerie footsteps, and unexplained cold spots. The layout adds to the unease, as one can easily become disoriented within its winding corridors. One of the most famous rooms in the mansion is the Seance Room, where Sarah herself is said to have communicated with the spirits. It's a place of both fascination and fear, with its ornate details and otherworldly purpose. Over the years, countless tales of visitors and employees experiencing unexplained phenomena at the house have added to its mystique. Some believe that Sarah's quest to appease vengeful spirits has left a lasting imprint on the mansion, making it a hotbed of paranormal activity. It's a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurs. The Winchester Mystery House is a testament to the enduring power of mystery and the human fascination with the supernatural. After a 2-year hiatus from hosting Halloween events, they've been heavily promoting their latest attraction in time for this spooky season. And with a title like Unhinged Housewarming, it promises to be their scariest yet.
Number 5 on this list is Cleveland Gray's Armory Museum. This building was constructed in 1893 for the Cleveland Grays, who were a volunteer private military company. The group helped law enforcement and dealt with other criminal ongoings that attacked the city's streets. They continued helping out the military for as long as the government would allow them to, but after World War I were no longer allowed to enter as a private group. However, they obviously had a lot of weapons and things of that nature that nobody would be using anymore. So today, there now stands the Cleveland Grays Armory Museum. These guns and cannons don't stand alone though, as there are ghosts living among these walls as well. Disembodied voices and things moving when they're not supposed to are all very common occurrences at the Cleveland Grays Armory Museum. The legend actually became so famous that this place was featured on Ghost Hunters, where they investigated the building and determined that this place is in fact haunted. However, luckily for us, and a reason why you still might be able to go to this place, is that the ghosts are supposedly out there for a good time. These professionals determined that the ghosts are not fueled by anger, but just chilling out in the museum and living their best ghostly lives. Still though, there are many apparitions of military men who will appear, as well as ghostly footsteps and sounds that just don't make any sense at all. It's all very creepy, even if the ghosts are only out for fun. It would probably be a pretty cool place to check out, just make sure that you aren't faint of heart. Number 4 on this list is Erie Street Cemetery. This is apparently one of the spookiest places in the state, and not a spot that you should want to be burying your loved ones. Only in your state rights. In 1826, this charming cemetery was established on East 9th Street, though it was known as Erie Street at the time. Before then, a community burial ground was maintained near modern-day Public Square. Expansion, of course, eventually caught up with the cemetery, and it's now right across the street from Progressive Field. This growth once threatened the cemetery's existence, as bodies were removed from the cemetery in the early 1900s to make space for the new development. This preparation was shut down when the Pioneers Memorial Association was founded, so the burial grounds remains, yet it now feels oddly out of place. Perhaps one of the most unforgettable stories is that of Jock Ossaut, also known as Walking Bear. Jock Ossaut was the proud chief of the Meskwaki, a tribe that existed in Iowa. Following the conclusion of the Black Hawk War, Jock Ossaut came out east to hunt. He made the acquaintance of Dan Marble and joined his theater troupe, traveled to England, and even came into the favor of Queen Victoria. However, he fell ill and parted ways with the troupe. Legend maintains that Jock Ossaut was making his way home to his ancestral lands, anticipating his demise, but that he passed in Cleveland before he reached his intended destination. As a result, local myth maintains Jock Ossaut remains eternally restless. His local friends like Dr. Horace Ackley arranged for his burial in Erie Street Cemetery. His dismay at being unable to return home caused him to crack his stone grave marker. This ghost has been spotted so many times and haunts those who pass by here. He's even said to haunt the Cleveland Guardians baseball park, which is just across the street from this cemetery. His ghost is forever restless and just wants to get home, but I'm not sure that he ever will though. Number 3 on this list is South Bass Island Lighthouse. Located in South Bass Island on Lake Erie, this lighthouse and the island it's on is honestly rather beautiful. Super cute and super quaint, it's kind of like the place that you'd want to go for a day trip with your significant other. However, you may not want to take said significant other to the South Bass Lighthouse itself. It housed lighthouse keepers in the late 1800s. The weirdness began back in 1898 with Harry Riley, the lighthouse keeper, and his assistant Sam Anderson. Anderson was a bit of a weirdo. He was said to have captured snakes on the island and then bring them to the basement of the lighthouse, where he kept a bunch of them. Anderson apparently lost his mind though during the time that he worked at this place. Apparently there was a small epidemic and he freaked out at the prospect of having to stay in quarantine. Triggering a little bit? It's thought that he took his own life by jumping off of the cliff portion of the island. Then later on, the lighthouse keeper Harry was found hopelessly mad running around the island like a lunatic. It was the two stories of these men that launched the legends of a haunting at this lighthouse. People are very scared of the lighthouse as they believe it to be haunted with some sort of demon that will make you go insane. A lovely and quaint little spot, but one that if you spend too much time at will literally have you lose your mind. Not to mention, the ghosts of these two men have been spotted from time to time running around frantically, looking as if all their wits are totally gone. Number 2 on this list is Edwin Shaw Hospital. Edwin Shaw Hospital has truly seen it all, and it's no wonder that it's deeply haunted today. It initially opened in 1915 as a hospital specifically for tuberculosis. Then a few years later, a side wing opened up to care for pediatric patients. Needless to say, during these periods there was a lot of death that took place. Then in 1947, things changed drastically and became a place for abandoned children, those who lost their parents, or those who suffered. For the next few years of this place's operation, there were a decent amount of scandals that took place. Tons of reports of mistreatment of these children, with some patients even taking their own lives during this time. Eventually this became a psychiatric hospital as well, and as you can probably imagine, it saw its fair share of human rights violations and scary things. Now, this place is no more, it's completely demolished, but the area is still deeply haunted. Ohio Exploration went prior to its demolition in 2017 and saw its haunted nature firsthand. They write, "Of course, with such a rich and diverse history, it is no surprise that Edwin Shaw was said to be haunted. The spirits of not only the tuberculosis victims, there are 246 buried in the hospital cemetery, but also of those children who took their own lives and those who fell victim to ill fates were said to haunt the hospital and its grounds. Doors opened and closed by themselves, and sounds of spectral footsteps were often heard in the halls. The sounds of a meal being served in the mess hall were heard quite frequently, but upon inspection, the hall was completely empty. Ghostly humming and other odd sounds were heard in Sunshine Village, where the bulk of the paranormal activity was said to take place. Be very careful, guys, of this place in Ohio." Number 1 on this list is Moonville Tunnel. Moonville Tunnel is a deeply haunted tunnel in Ohio that locals are perpetually afraid of. Jim Reed says, according to local legend, the ghost is that of a railroad worker who was crushed by an oncoming train in the spring of 1859. The newspaper article from the MacArthur Democrat dated March 31st, 1859 reads, "A brakesman was fatally injured when the wheels passing over and grinding to a shapeless mass the greater part of one of his legs." Talk about graphic. Most who claim to have sighted the ghost in Moonville Tunnel say that he carries a lantern and is sometimes seen as a hovering orb of light. At least 4 other people were reported to have been killed at Moonville Tunnel as well, although the details, they kind of vary. Some legends claim that Moonville was struck by a plague and quarantine, and that the ghosts are of those killed by the epidemic. Others state that the ghost is that of a pregnant woman struck by a train, and still others claim that it was an 8-foot tall man who was struck. However, none of these legends are quite as popular as the initial one. This tunnel appears on tons of the most haunted Ohio lists, and it even has a pretty massive section on Wikipedia dedicated to how haunted it is. That can't be said for most other places, and just kind of leads to the legitimacy of these ghosts. On the Wikipedia page, there are also extensive stories about the Lavender Lady, the engineer, and the bully, who were all apparently characters that died due to this train many years ago. As Jim Reed mentioned earlier though, these are lesser legends, but still could have actually happened. Whatever or whoever is truly haunting this tunnel, it's clear that it probably isn't safe for us to be exploring. Avoid the Moonville Tunnel at all costs. Unless you're in a train, in that case, because considering how our ghosts became ghosts, you might actually be safe.